You're watching Cable 2.
Good evening, and welcome to the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education September 10th School Board Meeting. I am Shay Woodbury, Chair, and I appreciate your attendance, and also say good evening to our viewers on Cable 2. Will you please rise as we start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for our invocation. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we pray? We ask that you watch over us over these proceedings tonight, and that you grant us wisdom as we make decisions affecting the life of our young people, our students, our staff. We ask for your guidance as we attempt to do what we believe is best for these students and those that work for the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School System. Finally, we ask for your blessing upon everyone involved in the Forsyth County education process, including teachers, administrators, parents, and most of all, the children, as they are our future. Amen.
Officially, I would like to welcome our new superintendent, Dr. Angela Pringle Harrison. I think this will be a very robust meeting tonight, and so we appreciate everybody's attendance. Before we get started with the first act of business, I do want to take the privilege of the chair to make a statement to our public. The past few weeks have not been easy for our board. We are here for children. We are here to make our schools great places to learn and better places to even work. But recently, our work has been overshadowed by behavior that no one on this board condones. A former board member sent a single text message to one other board member and inadvertently to our recent interim superintendent. The message was inappropriate and offensive to the two people that received it. When the entire board became aware of the message, discussion immediately began on how to handle its insensitive nature and to address the board member that sent it. As you know, that member has accepted responsibility for the message, apologized, and resigned her position. Around this same time, a staff member posted minutes of a previous closed session where the board discussed confidential personnel matters. The document was immediately taken down when it was discovered. While we do not condone the text message and hate the posting that happened, we cannot delve into these matters because they have legal and personnel implications. State laws do not allow us to talk about these issues publicly. What we can say is this: as members of this Board of Education, we are aware of the sensitive issues surrounding equity and inclusion in our community. This is why equity, diversity, and inclusion have become primary to our work as a board. Over the past few months, this board has communicated that diversity, inclusion, and equity matter most in our efforts to provide an excellent education for every student. We have demonstrated our commitment by, 1, establishing a climate, culture, and equity committee to study and improve how this district manages these issues. 2, forming a school choice committee that includes many members of our community to examine the impacts of choice on students of all races and socioeconomic backgrounds. 3rd, hiring a new superintendent who demonstrated a keen understanding of strategies related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And lastly, creating a new Office of Equity, Access, and Acceleration, and hope to announce the district's first ever Director of Equity. As a board, we know we have much more work to do on behalf of our students. We are here for students, and we need to get back to the work of helping them achieve success. We appreciate our community partners that stand with us as we move forward in making this district a place where diversity is valued, equity is the norm, and everyone is included. This letter is signed by the following board members: Board Member Bramer, Board Member Calvert Hayes, Board Member Motzinger, Board Member Jones, and myself. Yes. So, yes. So if you signed off on the letter, we can all stand up, and that includes myself. Since I'm talking, I'll stay seated. But we appreciate the community support. And lastly, I will say many community people have reached out to me to offer support and love in this time for this board for the sake of our children. I have not heard at this time any condemnation, none, which lets me know this is the right community. And when I say to this community, schools can't do it alone, this is what I mean, that it will be the support of this community that help us to move this district forward so that our children, all 55,000 of them, and the adults that serve our district can be proud of this place to learn and work in. And we thank you so much for your attention.
I would like to make a statement. First of all, point of clarification, as you saw, this board is not united with what Chair Woodbury said, so I am going to make my own personal statement.
So are you
I had no
asking
involvement.
Are you asking the board, the chair, to give you the permission to speak at this time, or?
Yes.
Thank you. And so let me say this, that the superintendent did talk to all of us about we could make our individual statements. So thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Let me start by saying that I had no involvement with this text exchange, and I absolutely do not support the actions of former board member Lori Goins Clark. In fact, I am appalled by her actions, and I have spoken up regarding the transparency, timeliness, and our commitment to voters. From what I have been told, Goins Clark sent the text to our former interim superintendent and she intended for it to go to another board member. A third board member was notified almost immediately after the text was sent. The remaining 6 board members were not officially notified of the text or shown the text until almost a month later. When we were shown this text, we were not shown any other text messages that may have come before or after the text that we were shown. So I fully repudiate the actions of Goins Clark and still have many unanswered questions concerning this matter. I was not personally involved in this situation, and because of legal concerns, I am limited with my ability to comment any further. Thank you so much.
The next item of our order of business tonight is the agenda review. If the board members could look at the agenda and, yes.
And I would like to make an amendment to the agenda on an action item, which is that we're going to discuss the board member's replacement, and I would like us to be able to take action on a plan.
I'll second.
On the replacement,
So,
It is not to replace the board member, it's to discuss taking action on how we're going to move forward from here, is what I would like.
okay, with complete transparency, this is not a discussion or meeting that the board, the full board, has had.
It has to be done in public.
yeah.
Right.
That is
So what I
correct.
am requesting, I'm making a
Is that-
motion that we amend the agenda for an action item that we can take action on how we're going to move forward. It is not to replace a board member tonight. It's to come up with a plan that we agreed to.
Again, you're correct, Board Member Bramer. It should be done, it's supposed to be done in the open. I was trying to make another point of clarification. It has already been done without the full board. Thank you.
It has not
So
been
the-
done. We're discussing it today.
So, are there any questions or discussions as it relates to Elizabeth's motion before we take a vote? Do we have any?
I was second.
Okay, yeah, she seconded, so I was asking any questions or discussions. All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay. So, Board Member Calvert Hayes, are you interested in an additional motion?
Yes.
I would like to move forward with this because my interest is with our kids. I want to be able to concentrate on our kids, our schools, and I want to move forward. I want to be able to put this behind us, behind this empty seat, and I want us to be able to progress as to what we were nominated for as members of this board.
Oh, you know what, Lyda, I'm sorry. I think Dion is looking at me because you would need to make the motion once we get into the discussion about the, so, yeah, Dion, can you give us some
there's a
clarity?
discussion item on the agenda
Mhm.
for me to explain to the board what options you have to
Great.
select another board member.
Okay.
And so then, after that discussion, it appears now there's an action item that's been added for the board if there is a consensus to make a decision about how you want to move forward. So that would be the appropriate time
Okay.
to make a motion.
Okay,
Okay,
so when we get there,
fine.
I'll let you know. I'm
Okay.
sorry about that, Board Member
Okay,
Calvert
thank
Hayes.
you.
Okay, so the next order of business is, while we are here focusing on children, we have special recognitions tonight for our JROTC state recognition by Andrea Main. Did I get your name wrong? You don't look like Andrea.
Sergeant Major Main, she works with me
Okay,
downstairs. now.
now I believe your name is Andrew. Thank you.
Cool. Madam Chair Woodbury, Dr. Hairston, school board members, ladies and gentlemen, I am Lieutenant Colonel John Brown, the Director of Army Instruction for the school system. And it is truly an honor and a pleasure to be here before you today to be able to recognize some outstanding cadets and their achievements over the summer. I especially appreciate parents and family members who are here to share in their accomplishments. And please feel free as we go through the program that if you'd like to come forward and take some pictures, you are more than welcome to do that. The mission of JROTC is to motivate young people to be better citizens. Tonight, you're going to see the results and accomplishments that the young men and women did over the summer. For the past 33 years, over the summer, cadets from Winston-Salem and the Eastern region go to summer camp. We go to Oak Ridge Military Academy. It's a four-day, five-night event that the kids go through, and they look at modified physical fitness, the obstacle course, land navigation. They do rappelling, STEM training, and they also do a multi-period of other things. This year we had 19 total schools that participated in summer camp at Oak Ridge. Of course, 8 from Winston-Salem and the rest from around the region. It is the first opportunity that the kids actually get an opportunity to compete and show their mettle against other schools in the region. So they get to go out and do some things that's competitive against the other 10 schools that were out there with us. During the event, all the kids are really competing for 3 things. At the end of the program, on Fridays, we have a graduation that recognizes the top 3 cadets for the cycle at summer camp. And I am proud to say that this year, all 3 top positions were taken by cadets from the Winston-Salem-Forsyth County School System. So, very good accomplishment. All right, before you today, we're going to recognize from 3 schools. First will be Atkins High School. And ma'am, if you would help present some of the certificates.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Cadet Chance Hockenbrook from Atkins High School was the Distinguished Superior Cadet, the top cadet at camp. So this was the #1 out of the whole program for that summer camp. Cadet Andrew Myers, Top Cadet for STEM Training Award. From Carver High School, Teresa Valencia, Company Physical Fitness Award and Company Honored Cadet. From Glenn High School, we have Cadet Catherine Guzman, Honor Cadet. And Cadet Mariana Rodriguez, Distinguished Cadet. It's nice to meet you, man. Thank you.
Mark time. March. Squad. Halt. Left. Face.
From Mount Tabor High School, Cadet Zachary Van Horn, Battalion STEM Challenge Runner-Up. From Reynolds High School, Elijah Davis, Company Honor Cadet. Cadet Carrie King, Land Navigation Award. From West Forsyth High School, we have Sophia Cleaver, Company Distinguished Cadet and Water Survival Award. And Cadet Seth Perkins, Battalion Superior Cadet, Physical Fitness Award, and Water Survival Award. And he was the #2 cadet in camp over the summer.
Forward. March.
Okay, he knows. Oh, he's sharp, right?
Madam Chair Woodbury, we've got one more.
Okay.
This is not originally planned in the program. I received this yesterday. Each year, Army programs nationwide get the opportunity to nominate cadets for the Legion of Valor Award. We're talking about an award that maybe 1 in 5,000 cadets get. So this is very rare, very unique. It covers a lot of academics. It covers their leadership. They take a look at their photo for military appearance. And I am happy to say that we have an individual that is going to receive that award this year. If Cadet Ball would come forward. Again, Madam Chair Woodbury, Dr. Harrison, board members, thank you so much for your continued dedication to the JROTC programs and giving us the opportunity to present before you our outstanding cadets. Cool.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Our next order of business is public comments on agenda items only. At this time, we will hear public comments. Please know we reserve this time to hear comments only again on the items that are on tonight's agenda, either for action or discussion. Direct your comments to me as the chair, and know that while we are not able to respond, I may direct you to a staff member that can answer a question when appropriate. We do ask that you be respectful, kind, and no, we cannot talk about sensitive and private student or personnel information in this public setting. While we hope it doesn't, should the comments become personal attacks, contentious, or otherwise disruptive, I reserve the right to end the comment period. You will have 3 minutes to speak, and if you have more to share, you know you can always email us directly. So I appreciate that. The first person we have tonight is Mr. Alfred Harvey.
Good evening, Chairman Woodbury,
Good evening.
distinguished board, and Dr. Harrison. Bring a little levity to this meeting. It's kind of tense in here right now. I thought I was gonna have to run up here, separate some people or something. But I come here to talk about the Board of Education replacing the member. And I came here because one thing that this board discussed when they started out this year as a board was transparency. And I believe that you should be transparent when you choose this next board member. I think you should really check this person out, because I'm sitting here with a letter that somebody mailed to my house. Did I like the letter? No. Did I like what was in it? No. But it seems as though some of you didn't like it as well, because that board member is no longer here. And I'm saying to you that you need to really divest yourself, look into the character of the individuals that you're deciding on. Now, I've heard, I don't know how true it is, but somebody called me and told me that you've already settled on a name. How are we going to continue to reach back from an old pile and bring that same old retread and put it back on your car? I know when you put a retread on, you may go about 15, 20 miles down the road and retread come up. I think, when you start looking at someone to put on the board, we need a fresh face, a fresh set of ideas. We don't need anybody from the old regime coming back. Leave those people where they are, at home, baking cookies, sitting in the lounge chair. Don't bring them back. Don't bring them back. You owe the people of Winston-Salem that. You owe the citizens of Forsyth County that, to do the best that you can. Don't select someone and it's already a done deal. It's already a done deal. So don't play us like that. Because we are the people who chose you. We chose you. We chose you because you said you were going to be agents of change. Well, it's time for you to stand up and become agents of change. I thank you, but I want to leave here by saying this much right here. There's an old poem that I always used to repeat to my class.
You want me to give you another 2
I'm
minutes?
just going to need
Okay.
30 seconds.
Okay, absolutely.
30 seconds. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams die, life is like a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is like a barren field, frozen with snow. Now, you know, from a barren field, there can be what? Reproduction, growth. And I ask you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person we have is Mr. Al Jabbar.
Good evening, Board Chair Woodbury. Good evening, Board. One thing that I learned coming to committee meetings is that, and I'm talking on the line of finances, it's a shame that the taxpayers has no more information about this fund balance than we have. In 2017, we had approximately $13 million in the fund balance. In 2018, we had approximately $10 million in the fund balance. Now, for some reason, our financial components of this school system cannot come up with numbers to keep this board informed. We don't expect you to have up-to-date exact numbers. That's not the intent. But I do think you owe it to the taxpayers who elected you that we should have some idea how you spending taxpayers' money out of a fund. There's a lot of people who want to do a lot of things, and they want to pull money out of this fund. I'm here to tell you today that as citizens of Forsyth County, we're not going to continue to tolerate this fact that you can't be transparent. You still are traveling down that road of not being transparent, as it was just illustrated by Mr. Harvey. You know, why are we hearing in the community that you already selected somebody? That's shameful. So in the area of finances, let me conclude by saying this. There are some people who sit in meetings and they're willing to speak truth to power. Those are the kind of people that we thought we elected, that were willing to speak truth to power instead of all this scrambling and catfighting that's going on. You need to stop it so we can get to the business of educating our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Alan Daniel.
Good evening, Chair Woodbury, members of the
evening.
board, Dr. Hairston. I gave Mr. Jabbar some information and he stole my thunder.
Mr. Jabbar.
Those numbers that he got came from me. They came from an email from a friend I have on the Local Government Commission. Local Government Commission is the Department of the Treasury division that handles, that audits and guarantees that local governments and LEAs are fiscally responsible. I was amazed as I sat through the Finance Committee meeting this evening and heard Ms. Calvert Hayes ask what the fund balance was, and nobody could tell her. Nobody could tell her what it was as of 2018. And after the meeting, I said, don't y'all get a regular financial statement? No. Y'all don't get a financial statement every? How can you run the business of the county when you don't know how much money we've spent and how much money we got coming in? How can you run the business of the schools? I asked for this information from the finance department 10 days ago. I got put in the list of public records releases. Well, I knew I wasn't going to get it anytime soon because I got 4 or 5 outstanding from months ago. Okay? But let me tell you something. Part of the reason I was dismissed as a teacher from this district is because I got fed up when the 4th check that I was to receive as a substitute teacher was the 4th one in a row that was wrong. And in the 7 checks that I got as a substitute teacher before I was dismissed, none of them were right. Sometimes they overpaid me, sometimes they underpaid me. It ain't no wonder the county commissioners want to see a plan before they give you money. I wouldn't give you any money without accountability. And I'm going to finish with this. Mr. Harvey said you need a new face. I've let all of y'all know I want to be that face. I don't think you have the nerve to put me on the board and listen to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Next, we have Jennifer Bryan.
Thank you, Chairman Woodbury, members of the board, and Dr. Hairston. My name is Jennifer Bryan, and I have 2 young kids at Whitaker Elementary. I'm commenting on the agenda item pertaining to selection process for a Board of Education member. The midterm selection of a new board member presents an opportunity for the board to be transparent in filling a vacant seat. Please consider accepting applications versus making an appointment. An application process would set the board up for success in finding the most effective replacement with current board personalities in order to reach the goals you've established for our school system. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next, we have Katie Sonnen Lee.
Good evening.
Good
I want to
evening.
start out by welcoming you, Dr. Hairston, Twin Southside County Schools. I know it's been an eventful few weeks, but we're glad you're here. And hopefully it'll be much calmer from here on out. I wanted to comment on the selection for the new, I know you all do too, Board of Education member tonight, and the process that you all are going to go through as you go through that process, because I know it will be hard and complicated. But I think it's really important as we look at what's going on in the school system, that we look at how we can assess the climate of what's happening in the schools, not just in the schools, but on the board, in the administration building across the street, all the other smaller administration buildings with the parents and students. You know, I filled out the Panorama survey, which came out for my son's school a week or so ago. And it's okay, but we really feel Action for Equity. There's a much better surveys out there that really dig in deeper into equity and the way students are feeling, the way staff is feeling, parents, community members, administration as well. And we wanted to bring that before you tonight. I will follow up with a more detailed email, but I wanted to make you aware that the Alliance for the Study of School Climate Assessment recommends that the school climate assessment instrument is the clear leader in being effective, looking at all the things that most climate assessments look at, but also really digging into equity and the climate of what's going on in the schools. So I have a handout for you about it, and then I'll sit down and we'll give you a minute.
Thank you. Next, we have Sally Hirsch.
Good evening, Chair Woodbury.
Good evening.
Superintendent Hairston and the board. So I wanted to speak to the Finance Committee, which is what I attended today. And I think finances cover a lot of issues, and also how we use our finances, what we feel we need our finances for, and all of that. I did hear some talk about equity from, I believe, Leah Crowley tonight. And so, but not a whole lot of talk of equity. And so I would ask that we do have a lot of talk about equity, because we have the new equity director coming in. We've been meeting for 4 months, I guess, with the Climate, Culture, and Equity Committee, which is really starting to get into things, I feel, just starting. And so that's what I would ask, is that especially with respect to finances, that we consider the work going on, not only in the schools, but a lot of this is going on in the community, in the larger community. And when we start talking about equity and culture and climate, that is huge, and that includes not only the child, but it includes the child's surroundings, the people that are involved in that child's life, the community that the child lives in, the greater community, the country. I mean, let's face it, it includes the world. And there's just so much going on, so many pressures on us right now. I would also ask that we really pay attention to the way we're communicating. I was looking at, for instance, I was looking at Reverend Barber's, they were talking about the meeting in Greensboro, I believe it is, on the Poor People's Campaign, and he has got these 5 interlocking injustices. And to me, I imagine a boa constrictor, and for many people, that's what it feels like. We feel like we're being entangled in so many vines and are being constricted. So that includes climate change, that includes what we're eating, breathing, drinking, how we're communicating with each other, how we're handling money, all of these things. So I would hope that we could interject. I see those 5 strangling vines loosened a little bit, and maybe we could add a couple of strands of hope and a couple of strands of easy communication with each other in everything that we're doing, and in all of our, I mean, it's difficult, I know. People have emotions to express. But if we start off with a lot of anger and before we get a chance to express, and everybody is heard, that's what I would ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. Lastly, we have Rhonda Mays.
Good evening, Chairwoman Woodbury, the board, Dr. Hairston. I'm Rhonda Mays, and I wanted to speak on the Finance Committee issue. I was glad to see that there is a schedule for the supplement, but the one thing that I wish that could have happened is that the process could have taken place before the beginning of the school year, so therefore people would have received the supplement increase in their first paycheck. But nonetheless, if it's coming, people will still receive it. I don't think they will turn it down. I would hope that it would be retro for the month that was missed, and also that we still continue to push forward on making certain that all educators' salaries are looked at and that everyone gets an increase. Looking forward to going to the meeting on Thursday to speak on that very issue, because it takes every last one of us in this district to make public education work. There's not one particular category of employee, of educator in this district that you can take out of the equation and things will continue to run smoothly. So we have to make certain that everyone feels appreciated, that everyone is able, as I've said in the past, to go to the store and be able to buy the goods and services that they need, because the price tag is the same for us all. We don't get a separate price tag because you don't have a license, so you get to pay this price. All of us pay the same price for our goods and services. And we need to make certain that our education support professionals are not living in poverty in this district, that they can be able to support themselves, that they can be proud to actually come to work here and not feel like they're working in the negative all the time. We thank you for hearing us, and now we're looking forward to seeing the outcome for our education support professionals. Still asking, what can you do this year for them? Because licensed educators will get an increase in a supplement. But what about our ESPs? That's what I would leave you with tonight. What about our ESPs for this year? They need a cost of living increase some kind of way. So that would be a good way to spend some of the fund balance. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the discussion items. First, we have Sarah Harmon with the 2019-2020 Wellness Policy Update.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Harmon. We have a local wellness policy, Board Policy 5143, that is state mandated, that deals with the health and wellness of our children in grades K-8. And part of that policy requires a yearly update for discussion for the board. And so I'm here to provide that for you tonight. I'll give you a little history in just a minute, but just as a preface, please know that tonight's information focuses on K-5 because our surveys are biannual. So tonight's updates will be about elementary. Next year's updates will be about middle school, and we continue forward that way every other year. So just first and foremost, historically, we've had 3 goals that we've been working by for these past several years. 90% of third grade students on or above grade level for reading, graduation rate of 90%, and then trying to close the achievement gap while also increasing overall student performance. And I just want to make the tie to health and wellness and how that affects those goals. We know that healthy students are better learners. 2 quotes that I provided for you there. Ray Pica came and did some work with our Office of Early Learning, and she is a huge advocate that children don't exist only from the neck up. So it's important, I think, that we focus on the health and well-being of our children and their whole body. And also an anonymous quote that $1 million brains don't last very long in 26-cent bodies. So I think we have to make very mindful decisions when we're thinking about the overall health and well-being of our children. We know that our schools can influence eating and physical activity behaviors, not only because our students spend a lot of time at school with us, but also because many of our students get 2 to 3, if not more, of their meals at school every day, and they also get a lot of their physical activity during the academic day. We know that that's going to help build strong communities. Investing in the health of students eventually will contribute to the healthy community that surrounds us. All of our students deserve the opportunity to be healthy and successful, so we want to make sure that we're providing access to healthy food and physical activity that can help them have academic achievement. And then I wanted to summarize some of what the policy talks about. I know for many of you, this is the first update you've gotten on the wellness policy since being elected, or for Dr. Hairston since you've come on board. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of that background, not only for you all, but for folks who may be new to this. Our wellness policy, as dictated by the state, outlines a few things that we must address. We have to have a district wellness policy committee. We have to have nutrition goals and guidelines for during the school day, which in our district is deemed midnight until 30 minutes after the dismissal bell. We have nutrition guidelines for other school-based activities, eating as a positive experience, nutrition education, goals for physical activity, which include PE and recess, as well as classroom movement, and then the role of folks in this district and in food services to provide a healthy school environment, and the way we measure our policy implementation. And this presentation is part of our measurement of policy implementation as we get self-reported data from school-based administrators. So a few of the highlights, because this policy in whole is about a 10-page policy, and so several of our schools have asked, can we get some highlights of the most important pieces? It focuses on physical activity and nutrition, but some of the physical activity highlights are that PE teachers are often asked at their schools to implement the wellness policy, and designate their school-based wellness committee. Those committees look very different from one school to another based on that school's needs, but they should all be encouraging 30 minutes of physical activity in K-8. They are encouraged to provide structured recess opportunities, but not just structured recess, because we know that free play has value as well. We encourage them to offer physical activity or wellness clubs either during or after the school day. We know for some students, after school is not a very good option, so some schools build those into their schedule. We try to discourage staff from using physical activity as punishment. I always like to address this one with folks saying that I hope we all think that teachers have our students' best interest at heart. And I think a lot of teachers don't use that because they want to dissuade students from being active, but it's because that old adage of what we've done is what we always do. And we know that that's something that students want. And so sometimes that's an easy carrot to dangle to try to get students to try to behave. And we can't withhold physical activity. So that classic, you get a strike every time you talk. If you get 3 strikes, you can't have recess or PE. We discourage that as well. And then some nutrition education highlights. Lauren Richards and I work very closely on this. She's with Child Nutrition. And the 4 that are underlined because we've consistently had schools ask for support on those particular parts of the nutrition and education aspects. So they should display healthful choices in the cafeteria. They should not use food offerings to reward or incentivize students. They should not withhold or limit food choices during the day. They should not offer food selections in their store. They are encouraged not to have food-related fundraisers, especially if the food doesn't meet what are called FDA Smart Snack standards. Classroom teachers and other staff should be teaching nutrition education, and teachers are asked to encourage good nutritional choices in the classroom. So through role modeling and also through teaching that they provide students with that education. They should have some type of health fair or event. It can be built into a pre-existing school event, so it doesn't have to be a standalone, but they should address health for their schools, families, and staff. And then they also have been hosting large functions where this work could be done. So again, just to touch the history, we started this survey process in 11-12. We've had a Healthy Active Children policy since 2004, but every other year we alternate with getting this survey data back from all of our either elementary or middle schools. Our last policy revision for 5143 was in December, and we'll review and update the policy again in April of 2020. So this particular year, we had all 45 of our elementary and/or elementary middle schools reported, and the principal at each school completed this survey in a Google form. We had, for the first time since I've been in this position, a 100% response rate, and we also had 100% of schools saying that they were aware of the policy. So those were both really good successes for us. And this year, I took a little different approach. I wanted to hit some of the successes and opportunities and kind of give you a summary that food-related fundraising has continued to decline. So we saw 52% 4 years ago, 36% 2 years ago, and then 34% this year. We have gotten a little stagnant, and we felt like we still had room for improvement. So I'll talk about some of the things we did to address that in a minute. Many of the schools already had those school-wide family events, and then schools need information about how to incentivize students and fundraise without food. Again, schools are not doing this to harm our children, but it's what we've always done has always worked, and so just trying to get creative with some new ideas. So some of the things we did to improve compliance, I won't go over all of these, but just some of the highlights. I've been lucky enough over the last 2 summers during our summer leadership retreat with our school-based administrators to have a session on school wellness, which I think has really helped, especially some of our newer administrators who were new to principalship positions. I've done some individual conferences with principals who were having some reporting concerns that had come to our attention. We did some policy review with school-based staff. So many times we'll have a staff where 96 or 97% of the teachers are not using exercise as punishment, but 1 or 2 are. And that principal wanted to leverage someone from central office to try to present about the importance of not withholding to help reiterate that message. We've had some conversations with PBIS coaches. Again, making sure that our work isn't siloed. PBIS doesn't support food as a reward, but sometimes people interpret PBIS to use food as reward. So just following up on those conversations to make sure that we're all saying the same message. Adding a wellness committee contact. Alex sends out a yearly school-based spreadsheet where everybody has to report a contact, and we added wellness chair, and so that greatly improved the number of schools we had reporting. We had a distribution list created, and then we also talked with accountability because a lot of schools were reporting that students were missing PE due to being pulled out for testing or other mandates. And so we just talked with them to make sure that that wasn't happening, or how can we try to standardize the message to prevent that when possible. I talked about that SLR session, but I wanted to just tell you, this past summer, we had 73 people attend that session across our 81 schools. 35 of those were from elementary schools, 13 middle, and 5 high schools. So to me, it means that the climate is right for folks to want to hear and be receptive to the message and try to make change. We have great community partnerships, not only with our health department, but recently with Insight Human Services, who provide a lot of health education. We have that Office of Early Learning partnership I told you about. I did kindergarten teacher trainings for every kindergarten teacher in the district last year to try to work on movement integration. Not to say they're not already great at it, but to try to give them some new ideas. We're going to expand to first grade this year. We know that brain breaks are highest in K2, but working with some of our schools to try to help improve not only the brain breaks in K2, but also in 3-5. And then we've worked very heavily with Cheryl Wright and Sam Mills on RISE Summer Camp. We know those are some of our best teachers in the district, and so making them aware of how to integrate movement, getting them excited, and that has really spawned a lot of the work that goes back to the schools in August to June, because those folks carry a lot of those ideas over. So some of our successes, I mentioned already, we had 100% of the principals report, and they all said that none of their teachers use physical activity as punishment and that no one withholds physical activity as punishment. So I want to give a little caveat there. I think what it is that all the form says is no one or everyone. And so I think we still have pockets where there are 1 or 2 teachers in folks' buildings who are withholding recess, and they report teachers do not, because the majority, vast majority of their teachers are not. So now it's a matter of just addressing those small pockets where there are a teacher or 2 who are still using exercise as punishment or withholding exercise. 93% reported good nutritional choices encouraged in the classroom. That was a huge uptick for us from about 70% on our last survey. We have 38% of our schools offering a health fair. That was up from 12% at the last survey. And 64% of those schools that aren't currently doing a health fair have some type of school event where they could. And so making contacts with those, for example, at a science night, to integrate some health information is hopeful. And really in these meetings, I feel like the best thing that's come is I've had a lot of questions around the how and the why of the work, and there really feels like there's been a lot of aha moments from our administrators about why this work is important. So some of our challenges. Health education time is very limited, especially in elementary school, and we have seen an uptick in health-related behaviors that have negatively impacted our students, so I think we have to continue to try to figure out how do we get more health education in our K-5. We have seen an increase in the 6- and 7-day specials rotations. So just so everyone knows, specials at the elementary school are things like art, music, and PE. And unfortunately, our policy is written that no more than 80% of that activity, including recess, can be under classroom teacher supervision, and no less than 20% under the PE teacher supervision. But what we're finding is, as the K3 allotment situation has increased the sections for K2, a lot of our principals, both in this district and in the sister districts that I've reached out to, Charlotte, Met, Guilford, and Wake, have not figured out good solutions yet for how to address the increased number of sections while trying to create equity with their specials teachers to not have way more in specials when there's 6, 7, 8 sections in K2. So that's something that's going to be a challenge for us. And we have some schools that use their PE teacher for other school-related duties. Again, not that it's a problem, but I think it's a challenge that if we're going to have PE teachers supporting reading intervention, for example, making sure that those folks have the appropriate training to feel comfortable and qualified to do that. And then also, one of the things that's happened is, because it's a numbers game, some schools do not have recess on PE day, because their idea is they've already gotten 30 minutes of movement, 40 to 45, because they've had PE, they don't need recess. Well, my debate for that would be, when students have other specials like art or music, we still give them that free play or structured recess time. And so we'd like to see all of our schools doing that. But unfortunately, some of our administrators know that if they don't take away recess on PE day, now it becomes an 80-20 balance. So unfortunately for them, they're trying to make good decisions, but they're trying to be compliant with policy. I think, again, a challenge is that we all have self-reported data so far. We don't have any other source from other folks in the school, and sometimes I think pressure is on administrators to report positively because they don't want to be the one that stands out. So I think we need to look at getting some other reports from other people in the building. The PE teacher is often listed as the policy implementer. To me, that's an issue because the PE teacher doesn't have the authority to tell people in their building that they can't have food-related fundraisers or they can't take away recess. So I think we really need to look at moving that job of implementer to someone in administration in the school buildings. And many of those PE teachers had not been told that they were the implementer at their school. And so improving that communication so that the first time they learn about that is not from me. That way it feels comfortable. It doesn't feel like just something else I was told to do. We know that 44 of those 45 elementary schools in August, when they filled out Alex's spreadsheet, said that they had a wellness chair, but in May, when they filled out this survey, only 32 of them reported that they had named someone. So to me, it's a concern that they had named someone in August, but by May, either the work had gotten lost or the importance of that person had been neglected. And I know May's a busy time, maybe there were a lot of other things on their plate, but I think that's something we have to address too, is that there were people named who were not remembered. And then one of the things that's come up to me is that I have to do a better job of figuring out how to track by school. We track by whole numbers of a cohort, but we don't have historical data for individual schools. And to me, that makes it challenging to address what the needs are at each individual school. But being a department of one, I haven't figured out yet how to historically track that data so that we can provide targeted support specifically to the schools that need it. And then I think the other challenge is just continuing to make sure that people understand I'm supportive, but I'm also trying to get them to rethink the way that it's always been. So I just provide these two models because I think it's important for us to realize that the whole child model is something that will help us reach our core values and those things that will help every student succeed. Questions?
Thank you, Ms. Harmon.
Thank you.
The next item is the TNTP contract for Forest Park Elementary School by Dr. Karen Roseborough.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Harrison, and board members. The principal of Forest Park is also in the audience today, Mr. Trent Watkins. Trent, will you wave your hand? Thank you. We are excited to present to you the renewal of the TNTP contract, which we entered collectively. And we are just so excited of the work that they had did at Forest Park this past school year. And we also would like to thank all of you for coming out to actually seeing the work in action. We would like to continue working with TNTP for this upcoming school year to continue the side-by-side walkthroughs with the instructional facilitators, to continue the progress monitoring that is needed, and to continue to assess the data as well as review of student work. The TNTP staff did a phenomenal job of modeling strategies with our students. So they participated in teaching our students as well as building sustainable growth in our instructional facilitators so that the school may have on-site coaching support, especially in the area of English language learners. We are hopeful that with this continuous scope of work with the new teacher project, that we will continue to build and expand the capacity of the teacher leaders in the building. And as a result of the project, we found that focusing on language acquisition with the students, as well as building vocabulary and blending the integration of our WEDA standards along with our Common Core standards was very beneficial to the staff. And I'm proud to announce that in the grade levels that TNTP infiltrated and supported the teachers and supported the instructional facilitators, the school was able to move after a number of years from an F to a D. They also exceeded growth expectations in the area of reading and also met growth expectations for EOL learners. So congratulations to Trent Watkins and his staff at Forest Park. Are there any questions?
Congratulations, Principal Watkins. We are so proud of you and your teachers and your entire staff. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Our next discussion item is the selection process for the new BOE member, Board of Education member by Dion Jenkins.
Good evening, Chair Woodbury, board members, and Dr. Hairston. You have a vacancy on your board. And so pursuant to state law and your bylaws, Policy 9000, the remaining members of the board are charged with replacing that board member's seat. The law does not require that a particular type of process be used. It's up to you what kind of process you want to use. But what I'd like to do tonight is take a few minutes to explain how it's been done previously and answer any questions that you may have. The one thing that the law does require, as was alluded to earlier, is that this process must be conducted pursuant to the open meetings laws. So that means discussions, consideration of applicants, et cetera, must be done in open session. So there's one of two ways that this has been handled in recent years. In 2015, when a previous board member resigned, the board decided to use an application process. And in that process, essentially an interest letter or an interest request was submitted and publicized. Interested individuals who met the criteria submitted applications to the school attorney's office. Those applications were subjected to an initial review to make sure that the applicants met all the requirements, and then provided to the board. And then the board members individually reviewed them, ranked them in their top 3, and then sent their top 3 recommendations to the school attorney's office. And then from that, those recommendations were used to compile the overall top 3 candidates who were invited in for an interview. And so the interviews were conducted as a part of either a regularly scheduled board meeting or as a part of a special called board meeting, but it was all done in open session. And then ultimately, at the end of that process, the board members voted via ballot in order to make the appointment to the board. And so that's one way that it's been done recently. More recently, in 2017, when Mark Johnson became the state superintendent and vacated his seat on the board at that time elected to forego the application process and made an appointment to the board. And so there's pros and cons to either way. If the board did decide to go through an application process, I have provided for you a sample of what an interest request or interest letter might look like. Of course, that's just a sample. You could always pick different questions if you wanted to, or different criteria. And I also provided for you a sample timeline. And again, that's just a sample. There's nothing set in stone, but just to provide you an idea of how long that process might take and how it's been handled before. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you all to ask any questions or make any comments that you'd like to make or discuss it however you'd like to.
Dion, if we decide to opt for the application process, could we also opt for not voting via ballot, but by raising our hand?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Dion, could you, just for the sake of the community, let them know what the timeline was? I think we got the email, but they wouldn't know what the timeline looks like.
So based on the proposed timeline that I provided for the application process, I would anticipate that as early as tomorrow, there would be an announcement made for individuals in the community to submit an interest packet, which would include answering some questions and attaching a copy of their resume and an interest letter. Under the sample timeline that I proposed, I recommended about a 1-week turnaround time for those applications to get in. And so on or about September 18th, the interest forms would be due. And then the following week, I would provide a summary sheet as well as copies of those interest packets to the board for their review. And so by the next board meeting on the 24th, again, this is not set in stone, but based on my proposed timeline, there would be another public discussion potentially of candidates, either selecting who your top 3 would be to interview, or if there's some consensus about one candidate at that particular time, presumably that decision could be made as well. But if not, then whatever the 3 candidates were, the top 3 candidates, they would be notified of interviews, and those would be scheduled at some point between that meeting and the beginning of October. If we needed to, we could make a decision by the first meeting in October, which would be the 8th. Or you could push it out if for some reason you needed additional time to handle that process, and then ultimately make a final determination by October 22nd, which would be your last board meeting in October.
So could you please tell us the qualifications they must have, such as where they might have to live and the party politics involved?
So pursuant to your policy, the only requirement that you, that the applicants have to meet is that they have to be Republican. Now, the board has chosen. Now, the board has chosen in the past to include that also as criteria for the application, but it's not included in your policy. And I think the reason for that is because obviously if the position was elected in District 2, to make sure that there's adequate representation. But if the person were not in District 2, then they obviously would not be able to run for re-election for that seat at the end of the term.
I think I'm the only one sitting up here that went through this. I was appointed. I also ran for re-election, and thanks to the voters, I was elected. I sat on that board as an appointee. I was reminded a lot of times about being appointed by members of the board because I had not gone through the election process. So I was determined that I would run in the next election. And thanks to you all, I was elected. What was it like? What was it like that night when I sat there and the press was there and I was asked questions and I'd never been on the board before? So I didn't have all the details that were needed. I'd been a substitute teacher, and of course I had had kids that were in the school system. But it was pretty difficult for me going through this process. Now it may not be for everybody else, but it was pretty difficult for me. I knew kinda where I was going to get support, and I knew where I wasn't going to get support by the questions that were asked to me. I knew who wanted me, and I knew who didn't want me. It's not like going in on election day and having someone not know or ask you questions or who you're going to vote for because no one knows. You've got a secret ballot. But I'm sitting there staring these people in the face, hoping that they're going to vote for me. So was everybody else sitting there by me, and they were good candidates. At the end, I was the lucky one. I was the lucky one. But I also sat there with the ones that weren't the lucky ones. And it was more than 3 at that time. And they had given their heart and their soul too. And they wanted it also. All this was public, with people sitting around me, the press there. And like I said, I was the lucky one. I could go out smiling. But there were those there that didn't go out smiling. And I know that happens a lot of times in different things when you run for things. And that made me think, do I want to put somebody else through what I went through? It's not up to me. I've only got 1 vote. But I will say, going through this procedure, it was tough for me. It might not be for the next group. I don't know. I still remember those questions for the ones that didn't want me on that board. I still remember those faces. I haven't forgotten it. Maybe it won't affect anybody else, but it affected me.
I would like to say that I am in favor of the application process because it is the most transparent process. It is the most democratic way that we can show the community that we want to be transparent. And in light of where we are right now with the lack of transparency, that should be the number one reason that we focus on doing it in a more transparent way. I think that when I hear Lida talk about her experiences and when she says what it was like when she had to answer questions, it makes me recall with clarity, it must have been what it was like for me as a candidate when I ran, and I had to participate in numerous forums, as I should have, when I was asked questions so that the community, so that the voters would know without a doubt where I stood on issues, what my position was when it came to closing the achievement gap, when it came to literacy, when it came to equity. And I think that we owe our community, just as Mr. Harvey, just as other community members have spoken tonight, we owe our community and we owe our voters that. We need to ask questions. We need to ask questions and we need to vet thoroughly the next board member so that we don't end up having the same kinds of, as you said today, catfighting and pettiness. It has to stop. I know we throw out is what's best for the children. You can throw that out all day long, but your actions must line up with your words. So the only way that we can hold the next board member accountable is to ask questions and find out where they stand on different positions. And if we don't know where they stand, then we will all be surprised when they sit up here and they vote. So I am for the open process, and in addition to that, I'm also open for raising my hand and saying who I support and why. Thank you.
I support an appointment process, and this is why. I've been here for 3 different replacements so far, and what I've experienced is that the application process first is long. We're talking about 6 weeks without a board member. An application process has not actually led to a more open and transparent process. For the most part, I could have told you who the votes were going to be for before any application ever came across a desk. So in that way, it wasn't as open and honest as it appears to be. And I tend to care more about what things actually are. You know, the state motto, to be rather than to seem, I believe that. I also believe that our board has had an extraordinarily rocky and difficult start, and that we now have a new superintendent. My wish is to get this new board member here with us as quickly as possible. I'd prefer somebody who actually understands the work of a board, because it seems to take quite a while before people really get a sense of what our work is and is not. And I want us to be as functional and complete as soon as possible. So that is my reason for wanting to support an appointment process. I believe, having been on the board through 3 different people, that it was actually the appointment process that made the most seamless and easy transition in the past.
And I do want to emphasize, Barbara, I too went to all of those meetings, and I was questioned by the public. But in this situation, this is not the public that you are questioned by. This is only the board members.
Respectfully, Board Member Calvert-Hayes, this will be done in public open session, and the people who apply know exactly the position that they are applying for, and they know that the public will be listening, and the public will hold them accountable for what they say and what they do not say as far as their positions. But if we do not ask them, we will not know. I also want to say that I received several emails from community members asking us to follow the most democratic process. And to do anything other than that makes absolutely no sense to me. Everybody who voted in the last election for the board members who are up here today, you heard us over and over respond to questions. It is very clear. It is crystal clear where we all stand on every position. Although some of us have changed, we did answer during that time. And that is why the votes were cast for the 9 board members up here, based on what we said.
Any of the questions or comments?
The only other thing I would
I
add
think,
for.
I was going to say that, so I haven't gone through 3, but I was on the board with 2 replacements, and the first time we did the application process, I have to agree with several of the comments Ms. Monsinger stated that I do think at the end of the day, it's still an appointment, whether it's an appointment after an application process or it's an appointment after just discussion. So going through both processes, there may not be questions that are back and forth, but it's still an open discussion and forum and debate but between board members of pros or cons and things like that around names that are thrown out. I would like to see the appointment a person named to the seat, because I do think that we as a board need to fill that seat. And it would be nice to have someone who has some experience and some stability that they could bring to the board.
Well, you getting ready to say something, Dion?
Oh, I was also going to make one other point of clarification just for the benefit of the board as well as the public. And it may go without saying, but since this is a position on a public body, the person also must meet the requirements to be able to hold an elected office. So just for clarity, that those requirements must also be met.
What I would just like to say is that as a social studies teacher, I struggle with appointment application. But by definition of democracy, it's the vote. The only way the people are going to get who they want in this seat is in 2023. And that is an honest civic assessment. This process is not perfect. What I would suggest is for any of you all that don't like it, go to the state rep and tell them we don't like the way that process is by which the school board has to select the next or a vacant position. So I want to be, very transparent with that. I will be honest with you that as a board member, I wanted to talk to other board members that had gone through the process. And I talked to the person who I believe I have his seat. And he said, oh, Ms. Woodbury, because he had been here 3 times, he said, we thought ideally that application process, but it was just the worst situation by way of efficiency and getting somebody on the board as soon as possible to handle the business of our school district for children. What I will tell you is right now there are 8 people on this board. So obviously there could be a what? A tie. What happens if there is a tie?
It dies.
Dion, could you tell us what happens if a motion?
Well, that particular motion fails.
Thank you. So the longer we belabor this process, that in and of itself, in my opinion, taints the process democratically of what we've been elected to do by way of when there are an even number of board members, we cannot with fidelity handle the business of this school district. So I thinking that neither process is good because you're not voting for it. I do support the appointment process.
And I was going to chime in, she took my thunder, because democracy is the vote, and that's when we raise our hands. I do agree that we need to vote with hands up in public, not secret ballot, but it doesn't matter whether you do application or you do appointment. It's the vote that counts.
I might be confused here, but whether you have 9 members or 8 members, you still need 5 votes for a majority. So I don't see that as a reason to move this process along. We can still get business done. You still have to have we'd have to have 5 votes if we had 9 on the board, or 5 votes if we have 8 on the board. And business can still be done with 5 votes. My concern is getting the best candidate we can possibly get to replace the seat. And to me, if we're only going with the ones we know of or somebody who used to be up here, we're not doing our job of finding the best candidate possible out there, and you can only do that through an application process.
I would disagree, because if they are involved in our school system and they are involved with us, then we know them. So we are not going to have someone out there that we don't know that is going to know us as well.
I didn't say somebody we know, I said the best candidate.
I said the best for our school system, that already know our school system. They're involved with our school system. They're involved, and we know them.
So what, this is, you know, the stuff that as a civics teacher, I wish I could record and show my class, because this is great debate. And it's not about taking any of this personal with one another, or even in the public, you know, you're getting offended. This is just the process by which, this is what it really means to be transparent, that we're talking through it, that you hear different sides of the argument. And with that lead in, I will say that the reason why, I agree with Leah that it takes 5 to move something. But the reason why there is a vote, a board of 9 and not 10 or not 8 is always going to be an odd number, because if there is the possibility of of course, a vote that is half and half, then it cripples the process. So I do agree with Leah that it takes 5 to get us moving, but as long as there is a possibility of 4 and 4, which with a board of an even number there is, then there is a possibility that it would hamper the democratic process of how the motion carries. So that's all I was saying. But I appreciate Leah talking about it's the 5 piece. Thank you.
So before we take the vote, I just want to say again, I believe I have an obligation to the voters to be as transparent as possible and to vet any community member who may be interested in serving on this school board. And I know that we have 8 board members right now, and I know that that could pose some concerns or slow some processes down, but I think it's more important and more critical to this board to select the right board member, not just a board member that we can move in quick, the right board member.
So this is a very vibrant debate. I think we're closing it down right now. I don't know if anybody has any last words to say before we move on. No. Thank you all so much. This is why I am so happy, you know, a lot of times to be on this board, because you have right now 8 sheroes. Man, we tough. And with our superpowers, y'all better watch out. We just need to make sure we're using them for the right reason for our children. But we appreciate you listening to this very vigorous debate about the process. The next discussion item is by Andrea Bramer with the School Choice Special Committee.
So the School Choice Committee met yesterday. We had 3 kind of things that happened. The first was our magnet standards. We're going to be doing an evaluation of all the magnets using the National Magnet Board's recommendations, and that's currently being held by Alex. We called a special call meeting to add additional questions. We are trying to fledge out our community questions. So our special call meeting will be September 23rd at 5 p.m. The third thing we did is we confirmed our advisors that are going to sit on our choice committee. That will be in the minutes. There are some that are confirmed and there are some that are missing, so you can look through the list. We will be updating that list. Hopefully on the 23rd we'll have it full and complete. And we then started our how we're going to disseminate this information, and we're gathering what is most important to us about choice, what it means, and how we're going to get it used effectively. So I really would like the community to know they can come to our meeting. We value the community. We're going to include the community. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? The next discussion item is the Climate, Culture, and Equity Special Committee report by Board Member Deanna Kaplan.
Thank you. The Climate, Culture, and Equity Special Committee met on September 9th at 6 p.m. After calling the meeting to order, the committee members broke into small groups to discuss and prioritize the 5 pillars for articulating an equity policy. The 5 pillars are equity and accelerated learning and culturally responsive teaching, equity in family, school, and community partnerships, equity in school climate and culture, equity in operations, and equity in social and emotional well-being. The group will continue to work on this for the next several meetings and use 3 policies for reference: the Charlotte-Mecklenburg policy, the Orange County policy, and the Coalition for Equity policy. Hopefully, the new Director of Equity will be able to join us at our next committee meeting, which will be held on November 4th. Meeting was adjourned.
Any questions or comments? The last discussion item is Buildings and Grounds Committee report by Board Member Leah Crowley.
Do you want to do finance first?
Oh, did I? Oh, sorry.
That's
I
okay.
did this like,
That's okay.
thank you. Sorry.
Okay, the Finance Committee met today at 4 p.m. The meeting was called to order, and Frida Lashmet, interim CFO, presented us with an update on the 2019-2020 state budget. No budget yet, however, but House Bill 226 was signed into law on August 30th, 2019. Frida discussed the teacher supplements. On August 29th, the county commissioners approved the $3.7 million teacher supplement plan that would be effective July 1st, 2019. There was discussion as to when the teachers will receive their paychecks, and it was decided to get the supplement to the teachers ASAP. There was also discussion of local budget considerations in the balanced budget as we know to this point. Kevin Sherrill informed us about a new system on the horizon that will give us instant real-time data on our budget. More info to come in October on this. Meeting was adjourned.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Now we will have Board Member Leah Crowley to give us an update on the Buildings and Grounds.
Thank you. Buildings and Grounds met today at 4:30. We discussed a couple bond projects, 2016 bond projects. Philo Hill Magnet, we got to see drawings for that, and for Easton Elementary School, the construction documents. And we also discussed a request from us to the county for capital outlay projects. And we had to vote on the Easton construction documents and the request for funds from the county, and both of those were approved. And we had announcements that included the Louisville Middle School timeline and safety cameras plan. Both of those are on schedule and part of the 2016 bond. And we were going to get location updates for Brunson and Ashley that should be addressed in closed session. And I just wanted to comment on one of the public comments that Ms. Hirsch referred to, a mention of equity in regards to distribution of finances. And it is our hope that in order to better serve children, we will use the lens of equity when making decisions about distribution of funds. And this came up when we talked about the allocation from the county funds for capital outlay as they pertain to high school athletic facilities. And we adjourned.
I just want to add that I thought in the Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting today through the leadership of Board Member Crowley that that's so where I think our community in this school board is going with making sure that we use that litmus test of, is this equitable for all children? And so it's becoming truly our norm here. And I just want to thank Board Member Crowley for always in Buildings and Ground, making that a point of information for our school board. So thank you so much for that leadership.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Our next order of business is action items. Before we get started, I think that the superintendent has asked to remove the curriculum associates contract. Okay. Also, I think that, Alex, you said that there was omission of the approval of the 1.735 million capital outlay that should have been on here, and that was just a mistake. Okay. All right. And so then lastly, of course, we have the amended component of choosing the process that we will use for the vacant school board seat. But starting at the top, is there a motion to approve the TNTP contract for Forest Park Elementary School?
Motion to approve.
A second.
Any question or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the approval of the Alphabet's contract for Cook Literacy Model School.
Chair Woodbury, I need to recuse myself.
Okay, thank you. So what I will say is that since we didn't hear a discussion about that, I want to let the public know that the Cook Literacy Model School received funding through Project Impact to provide for an after-school program for the upcoming school year. So that's what we're voting on, and I'll try to be poignant to kind of give a summary of what we're voting on, since we have quite a few different items as it relates to some of our curriculum focused contracts. So that's what the Alphabet contract is. So is there a motion to approve this contract?
I second Board Member Calvert Hayes' motion.
Any question or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is consider approval from the Hart contract for Carver High School.
Motion to approve.
Any question or discussion? I would just say this is money that they're receiving from the North Carolina School Improvement Grant. And if somebody knows about this, Barbara, you may know about
the ESSA grant. And this is the 4th year, yes. And Carver has experienced great success with that grant opportunity.
Thank you. So we did the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is approval of the Legacy Student Credit Union Agreement at Carver High School.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? I think that's pretty self-explanatory. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is consider approval of the Forsyth County Department of Public Health contract. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any question or discussion? I would just say that this contract will provide nurses in some of our schools. That's what we're voting on right now. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is approval of Pediatric Services of America, Inc. contract, and I think that is also providing nurses, okay. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve, please.
Any question or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is approval of the Envision Services, Inc. contract. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? I would just say that I think this contract is for helping our students with vision impairment. Okay, yeah, absolutely. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the Maxim Healthcare Services contract. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any question or discussion? I think these are also nursing positions to go into our schools, okay? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the approval of the Mission Med staff contract. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there a question or discussion about the Mission Med staff contract? I don't have that one, I think, listed out. Anybody know what that one is right off?
It's also for nursing for EC students in the district.
Okay. All right. So, all in favor? Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. The next item is approval of the Language Matters contract. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Question or discussion? I would just say that this contract, just for public awareness, is to provide interpreters or resources to service for our hearing impaired children. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the approval of the North Carolina School Board Association Strategic Planning Proposal. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? I would just add that this is the process that the superintendent is proposing, that we formally establish our district's strategic plan. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is to consider approval of the proclamation in support of Think Orange initiative.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any question or discussion?
Just how incredibly important childhood hunger is, and how important it is that we as a district and as a community address the needs for all of our children to get adequate, healthy food.
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is approval of the Easton Elementary construction documents.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any question or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is consider approval of the $1.735 million capital outlay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any question or discussion? Leah, could you maybe help the community understand what this part is if they were not in the buildings and
Sure.
grounds?
So there were a number of, we get, I'm trying to remember how much it was, 1.6 million from the county to address ongoing needs at schools. So like one part of it was that helps schools maintain their athletic fields. It's also for activity buses. And then also I think the primary reason it started was about the need for pods. Thank you. Yeah, for the pods. So there was $900,000 for installing and relocating pods, and then $216,000 for high school athletic funds. It can be used for everything except for uniforms. And then purchase of 2 activity buses, that was a big chunk of it, $250,000. And then repairs to existing buildings, mobiles, and modulars was another $300,000 for a total of $1.735 million that would
Okay.
come from the county.
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next motion, and Dion, I may need you to make sure I'm doing this correct. I would say the motion is initially to are we going to just name one of the processes initially and then vote on whichever one? How do we need to?
The way I interpreted the motion was for the board to select the contract.
So select the process.
Process for placing the next board member.
Okay. Is there a motion to select the process?
I make a motion that we select the application process for the replacement of our board member.
I second that motion.
Any question or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, is there another motion about?
I make a motion that we use the appointment process for the next replacement of the board member.
Second.
Any question or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, I think that the,
I'm opposed with a comment.
So Dion, where are we with the so that was. Yeah. So I think what would have happened, honestly, Vice Chair Burke, is during the question and discussion part of it, that's when we should have kind of dealt with that.
It moved quickly, and I was in the process of raising my hand.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
So I wanted to make a point of clarification. I am opposed to that process. I believe strongly, as I said at the top of the meeting, that this process has already taken place. And a selection has already been made, and conversation has already taken place to ask this person if they will step in and replace Lori Goins-Clark.
So the next order of, are there any questions or discussion? Because I know I just kind of gave Barbara, what I will admit is that I was so focused on moving through it that I didn't see anybody doing question and discussion. So I apologize. So anybody else have any remarks before I move to the next order of business? I apologize. So the next order of business is the consent agenda items, approval of meeting minutes for August 27, 2019, and approval of the general personnel report. Is there a motion to approve those items?
So moved. Second.
Any question or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. So now we're at our meeting that's open to the public, and what I will say is that before we begin this section of our meeting in which anyone can comment on anything, we say good night to our Cable 2 viewers and thank you for watching. This concludes our broadcast, and at this time I will
Thank you for joining us on your school channel, Cable 2.